Upon reading the update notes for 13.6, there were two things that got me quite excited for this update. The first one was, of course, the Star Trek crossover event. We talked about that in yesterday's video. But the second one was this new battle type that they are testing out in this update, Mode Shuffle. Now, Mode Shuffle, if you don't know what it is, it's a essentially second random battles where instead of having the domination and the standard battle game mode, we have airship escort, convoys, and arms race, but in an alternative version from what you would find in random battles, where the buffs spawn closer to the central point in the map rather than spawning out in the flanks. So it's a mode that's all about close quarters combat. Because airship escort, you gotta stay near the airships to escort them to the end. Convoys, you gotta protect the convoy ships from getting sunk. And again, with that alternatives arms race mode, you have to go more towards the center to get those buffs. So everything's geared more towards a close quarters combat type of gameplay, which is of course what I really enjoy in this game. In random battles, the meta in random battles is very passive for a good chunk of the game, and sometimes doesn't even devolve to the point to where you can get in close and start brawling and such. So I was very excited to test out this new mode, and after checking out the Star Trek event, I immediately hopped into Mode Shuffle. Of course, initially I was bringing my GK, my Schlieffen, my Tirpitz, all those tier 8 to tier 10 ships that are excellent brawlers, and they did great. But as I was playing through Mode Shuffle, I started to think, let's try out some older secondary ships, or maybe some secondary ships that haven't really been too viable now. But now that we're in a mode that's specifically for close quarters combat, let's throw some secondary builds on these ships and see what happens. And that eventually got me around to one of my old brawler friends, the Shikishima. Now, if you're a newer player, you might be thinking, Sealord, you've gone insane. The Shikishima is a sniper. It's a Yami with 20-inch guns, with very accurate 20-inch guns. It's not a secondary brawler. Well, you see, dear newer viewer, back in the day when the Shiki was originally announced, yes, she was advertised as having very accurate 20-inch guns. But she was also advertised as having, well, pretty darn good secondaries. And if you look at her secondary guns, the main attraction, if you will, to her secondary firepower is, well, 20 Harugumo guns. She has 20 of Harugumo's 100mm guns that go 1,000 meters a second. The shells do, at least. The guns stay there. The shells leave the guns at 1,000 meters a second, which gives these 100mm guns 30 millimeters of pin, which is very good at tier 10. It's not 32, but it's the next best thing, quite literally. Now, of course, before the Commander rework, and if you are new here and have been playing since the Commander rework, go check out some old secondary Battleship gameplay, like some old GK, some old Shikishima, some old, Bismarck or Tirpitz gameplay. The secondaries used to just immediately get the accuracy buff, so when you would click on a target ship, the secondaries would go from having this wildly inaccurate fire to just being laser pointers. And the Shikishima secondaries were very, very accurate when you would put the build on them, like literally laser pointers. So you would have these 20 Harugumo guns with laser pointer accuracy, absolutely melting stuff down at tier 10. Destroyers, light cruisers, even heavy cruisers that don't have 30mm or 31mm or above plating, she would just absolutely chew through them. And then you would have the 20-inch guns on top of that. So yes, she was quite potent back in the day. But then the Commander rework arrived, and, well, the secondaries lost their laser pointerness. And, of course, with the way that the game has been since then, not exactly a very conducive environment to Shikishima gameplay, brawling Shikishima gameplay, I should say. But now that we have Mode Shuffle, where you're pretty much guaranteed to get a game that is going to be, more close quarters than not, I took her out with a secondary build, and my God, it actually works. And it works quite well. Now, the secondaries, yes, they're not quite as accurate as they used to be, but that's actually working more toward your favor than not in most cases. Why? Because while, yes, having a laser pointer to basically melt DDs down back in the day was quite funny and fun to do, Typically, DDs won't get that close to you unless either they're torpedo rushing you or you're like the last ship and they're just rushing you and they're just trying to murder you. But of course, cruisers and battleships, they typically will get within that 11.6 kilometer range. And when you have secondaries, even if you have secondaries that can pin 32 millimeters of armor, that can be a problem if the secondaries are too accurate. Because the secondary gunners, where they're aiming at is actually like the dead midpoint of the ship, like right in the middle at the belt armor. So most of your secondary shells will be going into that belt armor, which you're not going to pin with secondary guns. So it's better to have secondary shells that will land, superstructure, bow, deck armor, if the deck armor is thin enough to be pinned. So you don't want quite a laser pointing when you're going up against, again, heavy cruisers, well, even light cruisers, of course, because light cruisers still have, usually, unless you're way down there at the lower tiers, belt armor that's thicker than, 32 millimeters of armor. So typically, you don't want that. And with the way that the secondaries work on the Shikishima now, you're getting that kind of nice, tighter-ish group of secondary shells that are still mostly hitting the ship, but they're hitting the superstructure and the bow and the stern plating and such. So that works well. And plus, they have a pretty quick reload time at 2.1 seconds when you do fully build into them. And again, you have 20 of these 100mm secondary guns per side. On top of, there's more secondary guns than just that. You do get the two 155mm turrets, which those guys, oddly enough, pin less than the 100mm guns. So you've got all that going on at the same time. In addition to that nice reload time on the 100mm secondary guns, you also have a 6% fire chance per shell. And when you're throwing that many shells at the enemy ship, and most of them are hitting, you will of course be setting fires, and fires of course going to bring additional damage into you. So, how is she doing in mode shuffle? Well, pretty dang good. The secondary guns are bringing in my case, about 60 to 75-ish thousand damage per game. I'm getting usually like 300 secondary hits, 250 secondary hits per game. Of course, this is a mode where, you are artificially forced to be closer to one another because of the modes that you're playing, but that's what she's doing when she's able to get within secondary range. And add on top of that, you of course have 20-inch guns. That's also going to bring you in plenty of damage. Now, what you might be thinking is, well, Sealord, of course she's going to do better here in this mode where, you're forced to be close into one another and it's a one-off mode, but this isn't really going to do well in random battles, will it? Well, let me tell you something. This mode is all about close quarters action. But you know what players still do? They still bring Slavas, they still bring Yamis, they still bring Yodos, they still bring all these ships that are, sniping ships. And I'm finding, especially in the arms race mode, players are still just playing it like random battles. But you know what? She's still doing pretty dang good in those battles too. Why? Because, well, she still has 20-inch guns, first off. And even if you don't build into the 20-inch guns, they're still very, very accurate. And yeah, you do get a wonky salvo every now and then thanks to the Japanese battleship dispersion, but I'm still getting like 20k, 30k salvos from across the map with these guns, again, without any modules being built into them. So she's still able to hang in there thanks to those guns, especially if you play a lot of Japanese battleships like I have, and you're better-ish at aiming at longer ranges with them than other battleships. So that's helping her quite a lot. Another thing that's changed a lot since she's been introduced is think about the amount of 30mm and below armored battle cruisers and large cruisers that we now have at tier 10. She can pin all of that with her secondary guns. Well, yes, back in the day, I think we had a couple, pretty prevalent ones at tier 10. Just think about it now. How many more of those ships have been added throughout the years? So that's that much more she can pin with her secondary guns now. So, given all that, she's a pretty good, I guess, sleeper secondary ship, because you can play her like every other Yami and Shikishima plays for a good part of the match, and you'll do fine. And then once it comes time to close the distance and get in there, you now have these secondaries to rely on that will do additional damage. And if you think about it too, usually when it does come time to push in normal random battles, most of the other ships, they're pretty scuffed, they're pretty beat up, and you're rolling in here with, a pretty healthy Shikishima, but now within 11.6 kilometers of you, it's just a death zone to most of these ships that are already pretty wounded, right? And the armor of the Shikishima and the Yami, it's pretty good when you know to cover your weaknesses, which is of course her cheeks. So if you know how to angle, you know how to position the ship appropriately, they are incredibly tough ships, with the exception of course, at close range, which is, ironic to talk about how good she is for this, but yeah, if you don't hide your cheeks when you're pushing in, you're gonna get clapped. But again, if you've played enough of the Yami, the Shikishima, you've learned how to do that by now. But anyway, yeah, you're pushing in with this, pretty healthy battleship with good armor, with the secondaries that can now melt down pretty much anything that's going to come close to you. And if the secondaries won't deal with them, the 20-inch main battery guns will. They don't care about their armor. Plus, too, on at least the North American server, it seems like no one really expects it. And if you think about it, I mean, they've been seeing the Yamis and Shikishima type battleships, the high-tier Japanese battleships, be played from the back mostly. So when you roll up with one with 11.6 kilometer death zone because you have 2 angry Hirugamo strapped to your side, it's a pretty fun time. And again, like I said, she can hang in there at the beginning, hang back, use your 20-inch guns to great effect, even without a build on them. And then when it's time to push in at the end of the match, go for it with your secondary guns. And they're still really good at murdering DDs once the accuracy is, of course, built up. So if a DD thinks they're going to be cute and try to, torpedo rush you, you have your own, again, 2 Hirugamo strapped to your side to help you counter that. So am I saying she's some godly, amazing secondary ship that's going to help you lead the leaderboards now? No. But what I am saying is that she's pretty good, and oddly enough, the time that has gone on since the Commander rework has helped her become a better secondary ship because of, again, all the 30mm and below armored battle cruisers and large cruisers we've been getting at tier 10. What I'm saying is, if you've got one, it might be worth a second look at throwing a secondary build on her and trying her out. Am I saying go get this right now, go spend your still because this is a still ship and slap a secondary build on her right now because, oh my god, it's an amazing secondary ship? No. That's not what I'm saying. Again, you got her. Mode shuffle's there. Go throw a secondary build on. See how you're doing with her. If you have a similar experience as what I'm having, congratulations. Again, it's mode shuffle. The stats don't even count. If you're worried about your stats or your Shikishima stats or whatever, doesn't count in this mode. Is she still a better main battery build battleship? Absolutely. But you can have some fun during this mode at least. So give her a whirl if you got one. See what's going on. Or take some other secondary ships or ships that, maybe you thought about throwing some secondary builds on, but, didn't want to waste the experience in random battles, because random battles typically doesn't get very brawly until the last few minutes of the game. Try them out on this mode. I've been having fun so far with the Shikishima. I just want to share my experience with that with you guys. So hope you guys have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and all that jazz. Subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 60,000 subscribers, and we will be doing a giveaway when we get there. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.